Now I would like to show a very good game of Jan Karpov, where he was showing ideal play for white, quite similar to the previous game that we have already studied. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, d6, c3, bishop d7, castle, g6, d4, bishop g7, h3. I'm not commenting the opening stage of this game, so this variation is no longer popular, but the ideas still remain the same and common. Knight f6, knight bd2, castle, rook e1, rook e8, bishop c2, h6, a3. So the positional stage of the game is quite a long one before white begins direct attack on the black king. King h7, knight f1, b5, knight g3. So in this position, white has a control over the center, the space advantage. So obviously white here is standing better, and he has all the resources to prepare the active play on the king side. Knight a5, b3, c5, d5, c4, b4, knight b7. So now the situation in the center and on the queen's side has been stabilized. So now white is preparing for the advance f2, f4. It is always necessary to remember that before you go to the active play on one of the side of the game, you must stabilize the pawn structure in the center or another part of the board. Because if you fail to do so, your opponent can get good counterplay. So it is very important to remember. Bishop e3, queen c7, knight h2, a5, queen d2, rook a6, rook f1, rook e8, rook c1. So although in this position black has managed to take the control over the A line, he cannot get very useful use of it, because there are no weaknesses in white position and there are no targets for the black rook a6 and rook e8. And meanwhile white is ready to start the attack. So now he plays f4 here. So if taking on e4, then after rook f4 or bishop f4, so white will be targeting the pawn f7, also h6, g6. There are ideas also to play h4, h5. And as you see, the bishop on c2 is still alive and very active and kicking the king on h7. So this is diagonal. So in the game, black decided not to open the center and to play passively f6. So because of the fact that the position remains closed, white needs some time and patience to break through defensive resources of black. So now he plays h4. The idea is to play h5 and afterwards use the weakening of the square f5. Now bishop e8, knight g4, h5, knight is going back to h2. So in order to stop f5, black has to take on f4, bishop f4, knight d8. So black is defending rather well. So the knight in the Spanish belongs to be on f7 in order to participate in defense, controlling the square e5. So white now begins to regroup the pieces, trying to conduct g2, g4. So the queen is going to d1, king h8. Also there were tactical ideas that white can sometimes play e5 or sacrifice the knight on h5 and then playing e5. So it is better to move away the king to the safe square h8. Knight e2, knight e2 can go to d4, where it will be keeping eye on the square e6, also preparing the move g4. Knight f7, g4, knight e5, now exchange on h5, knight g3, targeting the pawn on h5, queen f7, knight f3, knight g4, knight d4. So slowly but surely white improves the position of his pieces. There are too many weaknesses in black position. Pawn b5 is weak, pawn d6, f6, h5. So all these 4 pawns are weak. Also square f5, e6, c6. So too many weaknesses to be able to save the position. Bishop h6, queen d2, bishop f4, queen f4, knight h6. So somehow black is defending rather well. So he is not losing by force. But white is going through. Now the knight on g4 is targeted. Knight e5, rook c2. Also rook c1 is coming into attack. So rook a2, and after exchange, knight g3. Material losses for black are unavoidable, because the pawn on f6 hanging, h5 is hanging, and then the pawn d6 will fall. Rook a3, queen f6, rook f6, rook a1, rook f1, rook c1, knight e2, rook a1, knight d4. Slowly but surely white is breaking the resistance of black. Now the king is going to the center, and white is winning. Of course, black was defending well, so white had to show best in order to overcome. And white is winning. So although this game was played when Karpov was only beginning chess career, I think this is a very good and interesting example of Karpov showing patience in his play, slowly but surely breaking the resistance of his opponent.